I grew up in a quiet suburb in Oregon, the kind of place where people decorated their lawns weeks before Halloween and parents didn't worry when their kids sprinted from house to house after dark. My friends and I were around 12 that year, old enough to trick-or-treat without supervision, but still young enough to believe nothing bad could happen on Halloween night. We were wrong. There was a particular house on my street that everyone avoided. It sat slightly back from the others with an old iron fence around it, the kind you'd see in those old ghost movies. The lawn was uncut, the driveway cracked, and vines had grown almost to the roof. But the strangest part was that it wasn't abandoned, not officially. Someone paid the property taxes every year, but no one had lived in it since before I was born. The neighbor said the owner died decades ago and her only son inherited it, but he never moved in. Some people swore they saw a light flicker inside at night. Others said they heard someone walking upstairs. But there was never a car in the driveway and no one ever came to maintain it. Halloween night fell on a Friday that year, and the air felt unusually cold. The four of us, me, Luke, Jordan, and Tyler, had already filled half our bags with candy when we reached the end of our block. That creepy house stood right across the street. Normally we ignored it, but when we saw something we never expected, we all stopped. There was a bright orange plastic bowl sitting on the front steps. It was filled with candy, full-sized bars too, not the cheap stuff. A handwritten sign sat inside that said, "Take one." We just stared at it. It didn't make sense. No one had been inside that house for years. No decorations. No lights. No signs of life. And now suddenly there was candy? Luke was the first to laugh. Maybe the old lady came back from the dead to hand out Kit Kats, he joked. Jordan smacked his arm. Dude, shut up. That place is weird. Tyler squinted across the street. Maybe someone in the neighborhood just wanted to freak people out. Like a prank. That explanation should have calmed us, but it didn't. Something about that bright orange bowl sitting on the dusty porch of a dead house made the whole moment feel wrong. We crossed the street anyway. Up close, the house looked even worse. The windows were covered in grime, the mailbox was crooked, and the front door had a long crack running through it like someone had kicked it years ago. But the candy bowl looked new, like it had been placed there that evening. Tyler reached for a Snickers, but I grabbed his wrist. "Wait," I whispered. I didn't know why. It just felt like someone was watching us. He pulled his hand away and rolled his eyes. "Bro, relax. It's candy." Still, he hesitated. That's when Luke pointed to the top window. My stomach dropped. There was someone standing there. A white face. Completely still. Watching us. We all froze. Nobody breathed. The figure didn't move, didn't tilt their head, didn't blink, just stared like its eyes were carved into the glass. "Is that a person?" Jordan whispered, voice cracking. Tyler stepped back first. Then Luke. Then Jordan. I stayed frozen. The figure wasn't fully visible, just pale skin and dark eyes peering through the upper right corner like someone trying to hide behind the curtain but failing. Then something even worse happened. The porch light, a light that had never turned on in my entire life, flicked on. At that exact moment, the figure vanished from the window. We ran. We didn't scream, we just sprinted as fast as our legs would go until we reached Jordan's house 2 streets down. We slammed the door shut and locked it even though his parents were home. We didn't say anything for a long time. None of us wanted to admit we were terrified. Finally, Jordan spoke. "It wasn't a decoration, right?" "No way," Tyler whispered. "It moved," Luke said. When the light turned on, it moved. No one knew what to do. We were 12. What were we going to do, call the police and tell them a ghost gave out candy? We each went home early that night. But I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that pale face staring down at us. Around midnight, curiosity, or stupidity, pushed me to check my bedroom window. I had a view straight down to the creepy house. My chest tightened. The porch light was still on. And the candy bowl was gone. I stared for maybe 10 seconds before something else happened. Someone walked past the front window inside the house. A shadow. A full-bodied shadow. At that point I dropped to the floor and crawled away from the window. I couldn't believe it. After all those years empty, someone was inside that house, watching us, watching me. I didn't sleep the entire night. The next morning, I ran outside the moment the sun came up. The porch light was off again. No candy bowl. No footprints. No signs that anyone had been there. I knocked on my neighbor's door, the old lady who'd lived next to that house for 40 years. "Did you see anyone at the old Carson place last night?" I asked. She paused for a long time, like she had to decide whether to tell me the truth or lie to keep me from worrying. Then she said something I will never forget. "Sweetheart, no one has gone inside that house since 1998. And the power company shut the electricity off 15 years ago." I felt my throat close. "But the porch light came on," I whispered. She shook her head. "Impossible." I looked at the house again. This time, in the bright daylight, I noticed something on the inside of the upstairs window where we saw the face. 3 smudges. Not handprints, not exactly. They were long, thin streaks trailing downward, like someone dragging their fingers across the glass. Almost like they were trying to get out. We never trick-or-treated near that house again. It was eventually torn down years later, but I swear to this day, on every Halloween night, a small orange glow appears in the darkness where the porch used to be. Just bright enough to look like a light turning on. I grew up in a small Midwestern town where Halloween wasn't just a tradition, it was treated like a ritual. People decorated weeks early, schools held parades, and every kid memorized the houses that gave full-size candy bars. But there was one house all of us avoided, even the older kids who loved acting brave. It sat at the end of Willowbrook Street, a one-story, faded blue house with boarded-up windows and a roof that always looked like it was about to collapse. The grass was dead, the trees behind it were twisted and leafless all year, and the entire property gave off an energy that I still struggle to describe. Not haunted. Not cursed. Just wrong. The strangest thing, though, was the jack-o'-lantern. Every year, every single year, a large pumpkin sat on the sagging front porch, carved with the same unnervingly simple face, 2 perfect circles for eyes and a wide, sharp smile that was cut just a little too far upward, almost like it wasn't meant to look happy at all. And no matter what, the candle inside it never went out. Rainstorms. Winds. Snow. Weeks after Halloween. Even at the end of November, that lantern always glowed, steady and warm, like someone was inside, tending it. But nobody lived there. At least, nobody we ever saw. When I was 13, the group of kids I trick-or-treated with got braver than usual. It was my friend Caleb who suggested it, he'd always been the one to push things too far. "Let's go up to that house this year," he said as we walked down the street in our cheap costumes. "It'll be the best story ever." The rest of us, me, my friend Lucas, and a girl named Abby, argued about it, but you know how that goes. When one person is determined to do something stupid, the group usually follows. We reached Willowbrook last. The air around that street always felt colder somehow, quieter too, like the whole world muffled itself the second you stepped onto it. The houses were decorated, lights strung up everywhere, except for the blue house at the very end. Its porch was dark, broken, and rotting. But the jack-o'-lantern glowed. A bright, steady orange light. Stronger than a candle. Almost like a tiny fire burning inside it. "Let's just go look," Caleb whispered. We approached slowly. Every step felt heavier than the last. My costume suddenly felt too thin for how cold it got, and the streetlights above us flickered as if they were trying to warn us. The house said nothing, no creaks, no movement, no signs of life. But the pumpkin, it felt like it was watching us. We stopped at the bottom of the porch stairs. "Okay," Abby whispered. "We saw it. Can we go?" But Caleb wasn't satisfied. He walked up the first step. That's when the pumpkin's light flickered. Not like a candle, but like something reacted to him. "Dude, don't," Lucas whispered, grabbing his sleeve. But Caleb kept moving. 1 step. 2. 3. Until he stood inches away from the jack-o'-lantern. "Guys," he whispered. "There's something in there." He didn't get to finish, because something moved inside the house. We all heard it. A dragging sound. Slow. Heavy. Coming from deep within the dark hallway beyond the door. Caleb froze. "Get down here," I whispered harshly. But it was too late. The dragging sound got louder. Closer. Then we heard breathing. Not normal breathing. Wet, uneven, almost gurgling. Caleb backed away, but the old porch boards groaned loudly, echoing into the dark. That's when the jack-o'-lantern's light swelled, brightening so much it almost hurt to look at. But the worst part wasn't the light. It was the face. The carved smile, the sharp, stretched grin, began to change. The corners lifted. The cut edges pulled upward. The smile widened on its own. Like flesh stretching, not carved pumpkin. Abby screamed. Caleb stumbled back and slipped on a rotten board, falling onto the walkway. He scrambled to his feet, and all 4 of us ran down the street. Not stopping. Not turning around. Not even caring if we dropped candy along the way. We didn't stop running until we reached the next neighborhood. All of us were panicking, talking over each other, trying to make sense of what we saw. We eventually agreed not to tell our parents, because they wouldn't believe us anyway. The next morning, when the sun was out and everything felt less terrifying, we went back to Willowbrook Street. Not to go near the house, just to look at it from afar and reassure ourselves that it was normal in daylight. But it wasn't. Because the porch was empty. No jack-o'-lantern. No candle wax. No pieces of pumpkin. Just an empty porch that looked even more decayed than usual. "Maybe someone took it inside," Abby said quietly. But the house was clearly sealed, windows boarded, door chained shut from the outside, the porch covered in dust that looked like it hadn't been disturbed in years. Then Lucas noticed something. On the ground, right where Caleb had fallen the night before, was a small smear of black ash. Not dirt. Not soot. Not anything normal. It looked like something had burned there recently. We didn't say another word. We just left. Over the next year, we all avoided Willowbrook completely. Then the next Halloween came around. Decorations went up again. Kids filled the streets. Everything felt normal. Until the last house on Willowbrook lit up again. The porch was still abandoned, still boarded up, still dead-looking. But sitting at the center of it, glowing brightly, was the same jack-o'-lantern. Same shape. Same wide, sharp smile. Same perfect circular eyes. Like it had never disappeared. Like it had been waiting. But that year, none of us dared to go near it. I don't live in that town anymore, but last Halloween, curious and nostalgic, I looked the street up out of impulse. Google Street View showed the blue house. Still rotting. Still abandoned. Still untouched. But sitting on the porch, even in the middle of summer, was a pumpkin. A faint orange glow inside it. Visible even during the day. I closed my laptop and didn't sleep that night. Something lives in that house. Something that waits for Halloween. Something that keeps that jack-o'-lantern lit. So it can see who gets close. And if you ever visit a quiet neighborhood on Halloween night and see a glowing pumpkin on a porch that looks abandoned, don't approach it. Don't stare at it. And whatever you do, don't wait for its smile to move. I've always liked Halloween. Even as I got older, the night still carried a strange sort of electricity, the same feeling I had as a kid when the sun set early and the streets filled with laughter, warm porch lights, and the smell of candles burning inside carved pumpkins. But last year was different. Last year, I saw something on Halloween night that still keeps me awake when the lights are off. Something inside a house I'd passed hundreds of times, but never paid any attention to, until I noticed the pumpkin. It began around 9:30 p.m. I was coming home from my friend Ryan's place after helping him set up a last-minute Halloween display for his nieces. The streets were mostly empty, just a few groups of kids heading home, the sounds of footsteps and laughter echoing in the cold air. The house sits near the end of my street. An old, narrow two-story home with boarded-up windows on the side and a sagging front porch. No decorations, no lights, except for one thing. A pumpkin. A single, perfectly carved pumpkin sitting on the porch steps. What made it stand out was the light. It wasn't flickering like a normal candle. It glowed steadily, unnaturally even, like someone had placed a flashlight inside instead of a small flame. I remember thinking it looked too bright for such a simple decoration. As I walked past, I glanced at it, and for a moment, I swear the carved face seemed to change expression. Not dramatically, just a faint shift in the angles of the grin. I told myself my eyes were tired, and I kept walking. But that was only the beginning. Around midnight, I woke up thirsty. I went downstairs to get water when I noticed something strange through the kitchen window. Across the street, the pumpkin was still glowing. Still bright. Still burning without a flicker. It was Halloween night, people forgot candles sometimes, but this light, it didn't behave like fire. I stared a moment longer, and that's when I saw movement behind it. A figure. Not a shadow, an actual person. Standing behind the curtain of the house's front window. He was tall, shoulders hunched, head tilted slightly forward. I could only see the outline of him, but he wasn't moving. He was just standing there. Watching. The idea of someone standing silently behind a window after midnight, with no other lights on, staring toward the street, it was wrong. I pulled back from the window, heart beating faster than it should have. I told myself it was none of my business. Maybe someone lived there and I'd just never seen them. Maybe they were enjoying the Halloween atmosphere from inside. But the thing that bothered me wasn't the figure, it was the pumpkin. Burning brighter than ever, casting a glow that reached the sidewalk. At 3:17 a.m., I woke again. Not from thirst this time. From something else? A faint sound outside. Like footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Then stopping. Right beneath my window. I stayed completely still, listening, barely breathing. And then I heard it, a low creaking sound from across the street. The porch. The sound of old wood under weight. I forced myself up, moved slowly to the window, and peeked through the blinds. The figure wasn't in the window anymore. The curtain was empty. But the pumpkin burned brighter than any candle should burn after hours. And its carved grin. It looked wider. The following morning, before the sun was fully up, I took a walk to clear my head. I passed the house again, half expecting the pumpkin to be gone. But no, it was still there. Still lit. At 7 a.m. Candles don't last that long. Flashlights die. No decoration stays perfectly bright all night without fading. I walked a little closer, pretending to tie my shoe just to get a better look. The pumpkin wasn't warm. It wasn't even hot, or cold. It felt wrong. Smooth, firm, but not like a normal pumpkin. Almost as if it wasn't carved at all but molded with impossible precision. And the inside wasn't hollow. There was no candle. No bulb. Nothing. Just light, coming from nowhere. When I touched the inside wall for just a second, something happened. The light dimmed. Not flickered, dimmed. Like it reacted to me. I jerked my hand back immediately. And while I was still crouched there, the porch floorboards above me creaked slightly, as if someone was standing just inside the doorway, slowly shifting their weight, watching me. I didn't look up. I walked away fast. That night, Halloween officially ended. Decorations came down, kids stopped trick-or-treating, the sidewalks went empty again. I figured whatever I'd seen was over. Maybe it was just exhaustion mixed with paranoia. But around 1:09 a.m., someone knocked on my door. 3 slow, heavy knocks. I froze. No one knocks at 1 a.m. Not on a weekday. Not quietly, not slowly, not in the pitch dark. I waited. Another knock. And then a third, louder. I crept to the peephole. My stomach dropped. There was no one there. But across the street, the pumpkin glowed impossibly bright, lighting up the entire porch. And in the window, the figure was back, standing perfectly still, facing my house. I quietly backed away from the door, heart hammering, and dialed Ryan. He answered, half asleep, asking what was wrong. Before I could respond, something happened. A third knock. From my back door. This one wasn't loud. It was soft. Like a fingertip tapping gently, almost rhythmically. Ryan was talking, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. My whole body felt frozen. I finally whispered into the phone. "There's someone at my doors." He stayed on the line while I slowly moved toward the back of the house. And as I approached, I saw something through the frosted glass. A silhouette. Not tall, more hunched. Shoulders bent forward, as if its head was lowered. The tapping stopped. And then something even worse happened. The porch light behind the figure flickered once. And the silhouette disappeared. Not walked away. Not moved. It just vanished. I backed up, shaking, barely able to breathe. And then Ryan yelled through the phone. "Dude, look out your front window right now." I turned toward the living room. And my heart nearly stopped. The pumpkin, the one from across the street, was now sitting on my porch, glowing brighter than ever. 3 police units came minutes later after I dialed 911. By the time they arrived, the pumpkin was gone. Like it had never been there. I tried explaining what happened, but I could tell they didn't believe a word of it. They walked across the street to check the house. No one answered. No lights. No footprints. No fresh signs of anyone inside. One officer forced the door open. Minutes passed. Then he came out and called the other 2 over. I watched from the sidewalk, confused. Eventually, one of them walked over to me and said softly, "There's no one living here." "How is that possible?" "I saw someone." He shook his head. "This place has been empty for years. The last owner died inside. No power, no utilities, nothing. There's nobody here." I looked at the porch. No pumpkin. No brightness. Just darkness. The officer noticed how shaken I looked and added, "No one's been on this property this week. Dust everywhere. Footprints would show." But I knew what I saw. I knew the light from that pumpkin wasn't normal. I knew someone, or something, stood in that window. And when I finally returned to my house later that morning, something made my blood run cold. On my doorstep, a perfectly carved pumpkin. Still glowing. Still bright. Still impossible. And carved into the bottom of the face, so small I almost missed it, was my name.